Some children don't remember being children, not fully anyway. They remember being responsible, being aware, being careful. They remember noticing things they weren't supposed to notice yet. The tension in the house, the mood of a parent, the silence after certain conversations. They learned early that how they behaved could change the atmosphere around them, so they adjusted. They stayed quiet when it felt safer. They were always helpful when things felt unstable. They stayed mature when no one asked them to, but everyone seemed to need them to. And over time, that maturity stopped being something they did. It became who they were. When a child grows up too fast, it's usually because there wasn't enough emotional space for them to grow slowly. Maybe there was stress, maybe there was unpredictability, maybe there wasn't anyone consistently available to hold space for them. So they held it themselves. They learned to calm themselves down, to not ask for too much, to not make things harder than they already were. They became easy to manage, not because they were easy, because they learned it was safer to be. One of the consequences of growing up too fast is that you learn to disconnect from your own needs, not consciously. Gradually, you stop asking for comfort because you don't expect it. You stop expressing confusion because you don't want to create problems. You stop depending on others because you learn how to depend on yourself. From the outside, it looks like strength. Inside, it often feels like loneliness because self-reliance came before self-trust. Another thing that happens is emotional awareness develops unevenly. These children become highly aware of others. They can read tone. They can detect subtle shifts. They can sense when something is wrong without being told. But they struggle to identify their own feelings because their attention was trained outward first. They learn to scan, to monitor, to anticipate, not to explore themselves. So as adults, they often know how everyone else feels, but feel disconnected from their own emotional center. There is also a strange relationship with safety. When you grow up too fast, calm can feel unfamiliar. Stillness can feel uncomfortable because your nervous system learned to live in readiness, to be alert, to be prepared, to be one step ahead. So even in stable environments, part of you stays watchful, not because something is wrong, because that's how your system learned to survive. Another silent effect is how they experience worth. Many children who grew up too fast learn that their value comes from what they provide, being helpful, being reliable, being the one who doesn't fall apart. So later in life, they often feel uncomfortable receiving care, not because they don't want it, because it feels unfamiliar, because they never learned how to rest inside someone else's emotional protection. They learned how to be that protection for others. There is also a kind of emotional compression. Moments that should have been processed slowly were processed quickly. Grief was managed instead of held. Fear was contained instead of soothed. Confusion was ignored instead of explored. So the adult version of that child often moves through life with emotional efficiency. They don't overreact. They don't create scenes. They don't demand attention. They carry themselves with quiet control. But underneath that control is often an exhaustion that's hard to explain. The exhaustion of always being composed, of always being the stable one, of always holding themselves together. Many of these adults struggle with something else too. They don't know how to stop being strong, even when they don't need to be. Because strength was never a choice, it was an adaptation. And adaptations don't disappear just because circumstances improve. They become identity. If you grew up too fast, you may not realize how much you carried, because it became normal. You don't see it as loss. You see it as personality. You see it as independence. You see it as maturity. But part of you learned to skip stages. Part of you learned to protect yourself instead of being protected. Part of you learned to become your own emotional home. And while that creates resilience, it also creates distance. Distance from vulnerability. Distance from ease. Distance from the version of yourself that didn't have to be ready all the time. But here's the truth most people miss. The child who grew up too fast didn't disappear. They adapted. They're still there. In the moments where you feel tired without knowing why. In the moments where care feels unfamiliar. In the moments where being held feels harder than holding others. Healing doesn't mean becoming weak. It means allowing yourself to experience what you were once forced to skip. Rest, dependence, emotional safety that doesn't have to be earned.